Trump challenges the World Bank on China. China threatens to cut off America's supply of rare earth metals. And the latest technology to spy on Chinese citizens. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This week's China News headlines. The Communist Party has lost Hong Kong. I know, it's a shock. Who knew massively oppressing people would make them hate you? Apparently, this was news to Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam. According to the Epoch Times, Carrie Lam thought pro-Beijing politicians would definitely win the recent local election in Hong Kong. They did not. But even though the pro-democracy side won big, that has not stopped the protests. This was Hong Kong this past Sunday.
A sea of black as vast crowds of protesters took to the streets of Hong Kong's financial district on Sunday in the biggest rallies since local elections last month. It was the first time since August that the Civil Human Rights Front, organiser of million-strong marches earlier in the year that paralysed the Asian Finance Centre, had received authorities' permission for a rally. It estimated turnout of 800,000.
Wow, 800,000 people. But Carrie Lam was quick to respond with hurricane-force spin. The massive protests, she says, are a sign that everything is fine.
This reflects the freedoms that Hong Kong people are enjoying. And so I hope that this phenomenon will go also to abroad to show that Hong Kong is upholding all the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong people. So all those accusations from various quarters that we are eroding people's freedoms is unsubstantiated.
Right? Right? 6 months of continuous protests show there's absolutely nothing wrong in Hong Kong. Here's another bad sign. One of the protesters' 5 demands is an independent investigation into police brutality. The Hong Kong government refused. They said, we don't need an independent investigation into the police. We already have an organization to watch the police, the Independent Police Complaints Council, or IPCC. See, it says independent right there in the name. The only problem is that it can't do its job. It can't call witnesses. It can't make the police give up evidence. In fact, it can't even take complaints against the police. People have to submit complaints against the police, who then definitely pass those complaints on to the IPCC. A group of foreign experts was recruited to make sure the IPCC's police investigation was objective. Well, they just resigned.
You can see that the international expert panel, the members of the international expert panels all resigned from the IPCC or from this panel before the publication of the interim report. This is a very crucial act, and you can see that it is like a vote of non-confidence to this report.
But the fact that people can freely criticize the report is a sign that freedoms are doing fine in Hong Kong, right? Meanwhile, the Hong Kong police have been going on a PR binge, accusing people of spreading fake news, photographing hard-working riot police eating in full gear on the street, and duct taping a tear gas canister to the wall, just like that banana art installation. They really need to fire their new PR guy. A Hong Kong democracy protester says he was ambushed by masked Chinese men in Australia. If only Australia had the kind of freedoms Hong Kong does. Meanwhile, Taiwan's top diplomat said Taiwan will help if the Chinese military cracks down in Hong Kong. Sadly, he did not mean Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen would go full Rambo. He meant that if people start fleeing from Hong Kong, Taiwan is going to work with the international community to provide necessary assistance to those who are displaced by the violence there. Wow, I can see why he's the top diplomat. That was very diplomatic and boring, especially considering the new claims that the Chinese Communist Party is meddling in Taiwan's election, the presidential elections coming up on January 11th, 2020. A Chinese defector said 2 Hong Kong executives with close ties to the Chinese military were involved in manipulating Taiwan's elections. That manipulation included a multi-pronged effort to finance pro-Beijing candidates, buy off voters, and sow disinformation on television channels and on the internet. Sorry, Putin, you're no longer the world's best election meddler. The World Bank is an organization that lends money at low interest rates to help developing countries. Apparently, that somehow also includes China. Yes, China, the world's second biggest economy, the country that has so much cash to spare that it lends hundreds of billions of dollars to other countries through its Belt and Road Initiative. Well, President Donald Trump has called out the World Bank for lending to China. This was after the World Bank said it would lend China $1 to $1.5 billion in low-interest loans through June 2025. The U.S. government had objected to that plan, but the World Bank went through with it anyway. But get this. This is actually a decrease in lending to China. In 2017, the World Bank lent China $2.4 billion. Maybe they wouldn't need so many loans if they used more money to help people in China instead of propping up dictators around the world. But gosh, what do I know? And when I said use more money to help people in China, I did not mean finance more human rights violations. Just wanted to clear that up because China apparently tried to get the World Bank to fund surveillance in Xinjiang. Xinjiang is the region where China has locked up more than 1 million ethnic Uyghurs and other minorities in concentration camps. Look, I get it. The Chinese Communist Party needs the cash. Ethnic cleansing isn't cheap. Meanwhile, China's foreign minister says China is big but non-threatening, like a panda. I actually agree. They are just like a panda. This panda. The foreign minister added that paranoia toward China is a highly dangerous disease. Don't worry, the Communist Party has a treatment center where they can cure you of your disease. Democrats and Republicans once again agree. This time on a new defense bill that would ban Chinese-made buses and rail cars. The idea is instead of giving that money to Chinese state-owned corporations, give that money to American companies to build America's buses and subways. Also, American companies are probably a bit less likely to build a subway car that will spy on us. It's been a year since 2 Canadian citizens were put in Chinese jail. Their crime? Being citizens of a country that arrested a rich Chinese person for breaking the law. Justice, with Chinese characteristics. Well, after a year in jail, there's some really good news for the 2 men. They might actually get a trial. Nothing like being jailed for a year without trial. Did I mention they haven't been allowed to speak to a lawyer or to their families? Something to think about the next time you visit China. On the bright side, the Canadians haven't been alone. A new report by the Committee to Protect Journalists says China just beat out Turkey as the top jailer of journalists. Man, Xi Jinping is really winning all the awards. Library officials in China's Gansu province have started burning books that are not politically correct. That happened back in October after the Ministry of Education ordered libraries to get rid of inappropriate books. Burning books! Yes, the Chinese Communist Party is really getting back to its roots. Although honestly, this new campaign really needs to step it up. They did it so much more efficiently in Mao Zedong's time. But this story took a weird twist when the book-burning librarians got in trouble. That's because this story went viral on Chinese social media this week and sparked a huge backlash. Yeah, burn the books, but not in public. Jeez. For years, big tech companies like Microsoft, Google, and Apple have been desperately trying to get into the China market, even going so far as doing research with Chinese military universities. Well, too bad for them, because China is banning foreign tech in government and public offices. Gosh, I really feel bad for these tech companies. More debt trap diplomacy. These are the Faroe Islands. They're pretty much autonomous, but they are part of Denmark. The Chinese Communist Party has made it clear if the Faroe Islands wants a trade deal, they had better accept Chinese telecom giant Huawei. Now, the United States has been encouraging everyone to avoid Huawei since it's closely linked to the Chinese military and is a huge national security concern. But for places like the Faroe Islands, Chinese money is a heck of a lot more appealing than no money. And Chinese money comes with Chinese state-backed companies like Huawei. And finally, 11 Chinese migrants tried to smuggle themselves into the US by hiding inside furniture and appliances. That's right, to sneak into America, people are doing this and this. America, so great, it's worth hiding in a washing machine. And don't go anywhere, because after the break, the Chinese Communist Party is threatening to weaponize rare earth metals. But it may be backfiring. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. What do lanthanum, neodymium, and yttrium have in common? Other than being your ace in the hole during your next game of Scrabble, they're all rare earth metals, also known as rare earth minerals or simply rare earths. There are a total of 17 rare earth metals on the periodic table. Rare earth metals are used in everything from batteries to cell phones to precision-guided missiles.
Rare earths are quite distinct among themselves within that family, but one of the characteristics that they do all share are these fantastic magnetic and conductive properties.
For example, if you combine neodymium with iron and boron, you can make a powerful permanent magnet. Those magnets can be used in things from small headphones to big motors. And one country dominates the market for rare earth metals: China.
You know, Ali, they decided more than a decade ago that it was an incredible strategic asset. Having all of these rare earth minerals they knew would put them in a dominant position to, govern the manufacture of, as you say, everything from missile technology, the guidance systems and magnets that go into guiding the fins of missiles, to the touch screens that we use on our iPhone. They knew that they would be in charge of all of that.
China has around 44 million tons of rare earth reserves. That's twice as much as Brazil or Vietnam, and way more than the United States. In 2018, China produced 70% of the world's supply of rare earths. But that wasn't always the case. There was a time when the US was the world's top producer of rare earths. James Litinsky is the CEO of a capital group that bought the Mountain Pass mine in California after it went bankrupt.
So Mountain Pass, the site that we acquired at a bankruptcy, was from the 1960s through the 90s, was the leading rare earth producer in the world. But essentially in China they have a lot less stringent environmental controls, and so about 20 years ago they took over the industry.
The problem with rare earth production isn't so much the strip mining. That makes for an ugly landscape, but it's a mostly harmless hole in the ground. The real problem is the toxic chemicals used to process the rare earth ore.
It is an incredibly destructive and poisonous process, going through the incredible amount of soil you have to go through to get these minerals out of the earth. And so we just don't abide by those standards. We won't poison our croplands the way China has been willing to.
And if any country is willing to poison its own farmland, it's China. Like in the Chinese city of Baotou, the biggest industrial city in Inner Mongolia. It's home to the ginormous Baogang steel and rare earth complex. Inside the plant, toxic chemicals are used to process the ore and extract the rare earth metals. Then radioactive waste gets dumped in a massive lake of toxic sludge. The BBC calls it a dystopian lake filled by the world's tech lust. Farmers living near Lake Dystopia complain the winds whip up cancer-causing toxin and dumps them on their land, which poisons the soil and water, and causes the farmers' teeth to fall out and their hair to turn white. And now, the US gets 80% of its rare earths from China, including places like Baotou. And even if you don't care about environmental pollution, there's another problem. China is using its dominance of the rare earth market as a weapon in political disputes. Like back in 2010, when China got into a territorial spat with Japan over control of the Senkaku Islands. In retaliation, China hiked rare earth prices 10 times for Japan, the world's biggest buyer of rare earth metals.
100% of our rare earth minerals come from China.
His company makes magnets for laptops and depends on a steady supply of rare earths. By choking off the supply, China put his business in a stranglehold. And then in May of this year, China signaled that it might weaponize rare earths as part of its escalating trade war with the U.S.
China will meet the reasonable demand of other countries for rare earths. But it would be totally unacceptable to us if these countries were to use rare earths to produce products used against China or to oppress us.
The CCP mouthpiece, The People's Daily, also ran an editorial asking, will rare earths become a counterweapon for China to hit back against the pressure the United States has put on it for no reason at all? The answer is no mystery. Wow, they're not very good at subtlety, are they? Then the Global Times ran this editorial, quoting a senior academic who said the ace in China's hand is a complete ban on exports of rare earths to the U.S., adding that this is not the only way to make the U.S. economy feel pain. The trouble is, weaponizing rare earth exports seems to be backfiring on China. Burned by the rare earths price hike over the Senkaku Islands, Japan decided to cut its dependency on Chinese rare earths.
Japanese government with Japanese company will collaborate together to looking for other countries like Vietnam, Mongolia, and Central Asia, Kazakhstan.
And then last year, Japan discovered a huge underwater deposit of rare earth metals that will last for centuries. And China, by squeezing supply and causing prices to rise, has also given America the opportunity to free itself from its dependency on Chinese rare earths.
The United States used to be the most important single producing country for rare earths from a single mine called the Mountain Pass Mine.
The Mountain Pass Mine is located in Southern California, near the border with Nevada. After it went bankrupt, the mine was bought by JTL Capital Group, which hired more people and invested in the facility.
We bought the facility out of bankruptcy in 2017. At the time, it had 8 employees, and it was in care and maintenance. Over the last 2 years, we've been doing a ramp up in 2 stages. Over the last 2 years, we've hired 200 people, so we've created 200 American hard-working jobs.
But what about the toxic pollution? Well, it turns out the mine's previous owner invested in a cutting-edge facility that allows rare earth processing with minimal environmental impact.
One good thing they did is that they spent $1.7 billion building a state-of-the-art, environmentally friendly facility.
Right now, the plant only makes a rare earths concentrate that it ships to China for processing. But within a year, its owner says Mountain Pass will be fully decoupled from China.
At that point, we will be fully self-sufficient from China and one of the major global producers in the world.
So it turns out, by weaponizing rare earths, China may have inadvertently shot itself in the foot. By restricting its own exports market, it is helping the U.S. become rare earth self-sufficient. And by shifting the refineries to America, it's also better for the environment. This is what I call win-win non-cooperation. And coming up after the break, the Communist Party is working on a new technology for spying on its citizens: emotion recognition. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Forget facial recognition, eye tracking, and crowd analysis. China's hottest new surveillance craze is emotion recognition. Emotion recognition, the thing all my ex-girlfriends wish I had. Here's how the computerized version works. The idea is that software algorithms can tell how you're feeling by analyzing real-time video of your face. For a long time, China's internal security has used facial recognition software that analyzes your facial dimensions, hair color, and skin color. And they've discovered that most crimes in China are committed by people with black hair. Arrest all the party officials. You'll have to wait till after the revolution. But soon, China's 200 million surveillance cameras could start recording and analyzing people's emotions to figure out if they're likely to commit a crime. If the system spots certain indicators, say you've had a bad day and you're scowling on your way home from the office, up goes a red flag and a possible police interception. The trouble is, experts say emotion recognition technology is actually pretty bogus. This recent study found that while facial expression recognition systems are up to 97% accurate in the lab, that accuracy rate drops to around 50% in the real world. But never mind that it's only right half the time. The Communist Party has no qualms about arresting innocent people. And the party has already begun experimenting with emotion recognition to target China's most vulnerable population. A Financial Times reporter went to a spy tech expo in Shenzhen. She tweeted that a policing expert and party cadre from Xinjiang's Public Security Bureau told her they're already using emotion recognition to target people there. Xinjiang is in western China. It's the testing ground for the latest in spy tech. That's where the Communist Party is putting people in concentration camps.
The Chinese Communist Party is detaining and abusing more than 1 million Uyghur Muslims in internment camps in Xinjiang, the western region of China. The pages of George Orwell's 1984 are coming to life there.
It's 1984 with 2019 technology. But experts say it's still in its early days. More testing needs to be done before emotion recognition technology is adopted widely across China. But in Xinjiang, better safe than sorry. If you're having a bad day, smile, because anything less can get you into a lot of trouble. So what do you think about China's security using emotion recognition to target its citizens? Leave your comments below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.